Hi everybody, it's Mary Ellen coming to you from Moonrise Cottage for this really exciting reading at long last, and you're seeing the picture of the rune cast that I did in October when I was in the Naul, Fornox, meaning Cold Hills, passage tomb along the mystical Boyne River Valley in Ireland. Not too far from Dublin, this little place is. So I want to just welcome everybody, and then we'll jump in. As always, I'm starting with the image. Let me just toggle over and say hi. Hi, everybody. Welcome. To those of you that are new, we have some new folks. I want to really welcome you in a heartfelt way. It's wonderful to have you here, and all the people who are participating in the live stream events. I really thank you for that. It's really wonderful way for me to deepen my process and my practice and share my gifts with you. So, for those of you who don't know, I took a journey in October of last year as a birthday present to myself. My birthday is in the end of August, and I took my daughter with me. I decided it was time, and off we went. I was there for nearly a month. It was a really blessed occasion. Mystical things happen. As always, at least that's my skew on things, right? So I went to the Boyne Valley, intent on using that as a jumping off place in order to have a very sacred journey for myself about my lineage, the place of my grandmothers, each of whom had their own psychic gifts and clairvoyance, and just kind of muck around in there and see what I could discover. And I wanted to go to a lot of the sacred places that are aligned with the feminine, sacred. And it's not, many of you know the story, it is not at all what happened. And I was drawn in to a journey deeply into, in the time frame available to me, to the passage tombs that I knew very little about. I had done all this other research to prepare me for this journey that didn't happen, and Spirit had a completely different journey queued up for me. So I'm a go with the flow kind of person, and I just kept feeling very, very deeply drawn to these places. I spent an enormous amount of time there. So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey and do a little slideshow for you, and then we're going to jump into the rune reading. At the end of the broadcast, I'll check in with all the folks who are here chatting. Let me know if you're here and you're joining the stream. Please just say hi. And I'm always curious, where are you chiming in from if you want to share that information? So love and hugs to everybody out there. I'm going to toggle over. We'll take a look at the runes again. Spirit saying, just look into the photograph. Look into the images, how the stones are aligned, and then we'll do a little slideshow and I'll do the reading, okay? And then we'll have some discussion at the end. Probably I will clip this video off and clip off the discussion end and post it, okay? Because I do want this to be available for everybody. So here we go. So there is the throw. When I came out of the passage tomb, this was the last thing that happened. And there's a sort of, well, to me anyways, an interesting little story about this. So I had finished up the readings. I had done the rune stone throw. And I have used these stones. I've had possession, kind of like this deck. I've had possession of them for many years while I was being initiated through my own process of preparation and readiness in order to come to these moments in my life. And what Spirit's saying now is, and of course, that prepares me for what comes after. And we could all interpret that in the widest possible means, Spirit says. All right. So Spirit's chattering about her. Let me toggle back. All right. So these are the messages that are coming through. It's wonderful to be here with you. It's time for this reading. A little bit of thanks for your patience and for my patience, because they just percolated. I came back from this journey and I was overwhelmed in a certain way with everything that had happened I started changing how I was doing my YouTube channel. I started live streaming, things that I wasn't prepared for. And I just forge ahead because I'm lucky enough to have Aries rising. So I just go for it. And I figure, whatever has to happen, if there's an obstacle, I'll just plow through it, as silly as that sounds. So I came out of this journey in that state and very transformed and enlivened in a spiritual way. And he came home to tackle the next physical thing here for me, which was all the tech stuff. This reading just stayed with me. The feeling of it, the presence of it, the intention of it, and I've been carrying it along with my heart and my psyche since October of 2017, waiting for the moment to arrive. And then what happened last month, as many of you know, in March, in the beginning of March, I'm in the northeast of the United States. We had a lot of snowstorms. And sandwiched in between two really intense storms that came sort of back to back, we had one day of nice weather, and a butterfly showed up here. I don't know where she came from. There is a butterfly medicine reading on my channel if you want to look into that. But it was, for me, a confirmation and a harbinger, if you will, of all the things that are to come, because Spirit's been channeling through me the notion, the idea of movement and change and transformation and evolution. And that notion is, in a sense, wrapped up with this reading. So I had to put it off for a month to engage with the energy of that beautiful butterfly. And I want to make sure to just pay homage to that beautiful butterfly that was here for these moments. So let's take a look at Four Knocks. It is, in traditional Irish language, the name is Cold Hills. Translated to English, it's Four Knocks. And it's just set, like many of the passage tombs. They're just kind of sitting along the road. And if you didn't know they were there, you literally wouldn't know they were there. So this is a picture I took standing on top of the mound. I was surprised you were allowed to go up there and take pictures. And just like so many places all across the country, just beautiful, lush and green. Beautiful sky with the clouds floating by. It was a lovely, lovely day when we were there. And the mound itself looks like this. It's very unassuming, and you can sort of see the entryway there. It is fenced off to protect it. It was excavated, it began being excavated in the 1950s, I think, 1950 to 1952. And so it's been under protection of all of the Bruneboyne sites, which are UNESCO World Heritage sites. So they have some funding, they have some protection, which is good to know. When you come, you park sort of on what you're seeing here is the mound itself. The opening faces north. You park on the far side behind there to the south, and it's just Spirit saying, a wee little path. It's true, a very sort of short distance from what now is the road. Pardon me. And you sort of walk around, park your car, you walk around, you come to an entryway, and that's what you see. They have erected this very heavy, stalwart iron door so that people cannot go in. If you really want to go in there, you have to drive around the town a little bit and find the spot of the person who has the key. And you hand over $20 or your driver's license or something important, and you're given the key and you're allowed to go without a guide. So one of the reasons I went to Naul is that fact. When you go to Newgrange, or some of these other sites, or Knowth, Newgrange and Knowth are very highly controlled. There's Newgrange. Very highly controlled for very good reasons, to protect them. And I think a lot of time and energy and money was spent to re-erect the white stones that cover the face of Newgrange. Many of them had fallen, and so they were replaced very painstakingly as a historical site, and the artifacts that were inside very heavily protected. So along we come to Fornox to have an adventure. And it was a wonderful, wonderful event. And if any of you have ever been through these types of things, it's really terrifying in a certain way. There's something about the commitment, I guess, is part of it. For me, anyway, to be standing at an entryway. And we've had a lot of discussion over the last year or so about the gateway and what it is to come through a personal process and stand at the gateway. And I think for myself, that's the experience that I had. It was really overwhelming. I had to sort of stand there for a moment, had the key in my hand, and, you know, on the inside, luckily for me, I had a lovely friend with me because I felt overwhelmed and a little frightened. So I brought along a very sweet supporter, somebody that I met in Ireland, who also had not been, and we drove along. She helped me find the passage tomb. And suddenly there we were having, or I was having, this very intense moment and asking myself a lot of questions. And many of my fears came right up to the surface and questioning myself and was I ready and was I guess the word in a sense, it's not quite correct, but in human language I would say worthy and prepared, etc., for what was about to happen in this place. So I think it took me a few moments to overcome that. Spirit's chattering in my ear. I'm sorry for the delay. So there's some discussion coming through about that idea of standing at the gateway, having been prepared. And no matter how much you prepare, there comes a moment when you have some Spirit's saying, self-contradicting dialogue, meaning sort of an internal process for which you were not anticipating, so to speak, that you would have this really overwhelming moment. And I think people come to these kind of moments when they're giving birth, when they're getting married, anytime you have a large transition in your life. I think there's a moment that happens. So there was my moment right in front of the door, and I had to make a conscious decision to unlock the door and go in. So, you know, you unlock the door, I open the door, and that's what you see. It's pitch black in there. And then another moment comes. You have to decide, am I brave enough to walk in there? Because there's no light. Little tiny beams of light. UNESCO has drilled a couple of holes, light holes, in the ceiling. So there's little tiny bits of light. Otherwise, you would not be able to see anything because it's that dark in there. True for all the passage tombs. So in we go, and some light does come. And here's a picture about the main altar. So the passageway is short. You enter from the north, and the main altar area is directly aligned with the passage opening. So this is the main altar. It is located in the south of the structure. I took this photo from another website, and I will post that in the description area of the video when the video posts to my channel. Okay, I just want to give credit for that. It was so dark I couldn't take the pictures, and having not been prepared to go to these places, I didn't have like a headlamp, or so I was just sort of mucking around in the dark. Spirit's laughing at me, saying just like my life, you know, just like the human existence, mucking around in the dark, doing the best we can and looking for the light. So this is the photo that I took after the readings were done. So I did Aries, I did Taurus, I did Pisces, I did a community reading, Spirit's calling it global, and the rune throw inside this passage tomb. There's a lot of information. I'm going to post some more stuff. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a playlist just for the live stream readings so that you can find that, and I'll be able to add some links and information, etc. So when you walk in, you see this beautiful south-facing, or actually I should say north facing, aligned with the opening with the passage altar. It's very large, quite beautiful, and on the left and the right, to the east and to the west, there are other altar areas. Each one of them has a beautiful lintel stone above them. There's one. That's the picture that I was able to take. That's, again, how dark it is in there. So here is the east. So that's the west lintel, and I have some close-ups I'm going to show you. Here's the lintel for the east side. Those are the types of carvings that are on these lintel stones. And I was trying to find a picture of this other one, and I was not able to do it. So they have similar types of carvings. What I love about the carvings is they all, to me, right, again, I'm in there and I'm trying to figure out, as everyone has done, what do these things mean? Who did this? What are these symbols for? How should I interpret them? And we will never really know, perhaps. What is very clear to me is that it's about the flow of energy in some very profound way. The other thing that struck me as I was leaving, I didn't notice this on my way out, or on my way in, pardon me. But on my way out, when we were finished and I was walking out, and we had stopped to take some pictures and just to have a few more, I think it was actually another hour by the time we were done being in there. We must have been in there for about 4 hours, I think. So that stone, the assumption was it was a lintel stone at some point. It is just above, to the left and above of the passage, near the entry. And one of the things I love about that stone, and I discovered by accident long after I had been home and done my readings and talked all about this adventure, I want to show you something. So take a look at that stone. You see that stone? Same carvings. This story in this card, and most of you have probably seen it, this came out in the Taurus reading while I was in the passage tomb. So this stone is about a story about the growth and the healing and the resurrection and the shift and change that comes from our passing as a result of our passing. Having finished our journey here, we pass. This is literally a gravestone in the mythology of this card. And this woman is of the mystical realm. She is a healer. And there are healing herbs and flowers growing up literally from the bones of the person who is buried there, who happens to be her brother. Okay? So that blew my mind a little bit, as you can imagine. Let's jump in. There's a couple more pictures. I'm going to save them till after. Let's jump in to the reading. Okay? So I'm going to put the picture of the reading up again. Now, also, full disclosure, I'm not trained. I think that's probably one of the things that's coming down the pike at me. But I historically have no training. I'm not an expert in reading the runes. As I was preparing for this event, I did a lot of research. I watched a lot of videos. There's all kinds of stuff, as you can imagine, on YouTube. There's a brilliant fellow who's a PhD level, education level guy. He is a professor, I think, at the University of Colorado, maybe in Boulder. And his name escapes me, but he's got some interesting, really sort of just nuts and bolts tutorials that are on YouTube. If you want to find them, I'll try to post a link for that too. Just to talk a little bit about the names of the runes and the history and what the meaning is associated and how we can begin to think that through. So the runes were developed in the Germanic places. They are often seen as aligned with the Vikings, and yes, that is true, but their early origin came out of the Germanic tribes across Europe. They are closely aligned with the Celtic peoples who were also in some of those regions as people began to travel around and interact with each other. So it was a time before there was, just as there began to be, written language. Prior to this, things were handed down in oral traditions. And then these things began to be coming out of the Norse traditions in order to have a divination tool, and they were also used as language. Each one of these runes is associated with a letter. And so there's lots of discussion you can find again on YouTube about how they are aligned in some ways with ancient Greek and how in some ways they are not. And there's still some mystery about this very fascinating subject I've come to learn. One of the things, as I was trying to figure out how to read this runecast, because I had literally no idea. So one of the things that I learned, many people will, take the runes out, shake the bag a little bit, and pick 5 or 6 and put them down in a deliberate pattern. But apparently the ancient way to do it is to just cast them. And so that's what I did. I had no idea at all while I was there. So I took all the runes out of the bag, held them in my hands for a moment or two, mixed them up as best I could, and then just threw them onto the blanket to see where they would land. And I picked up all the runes that landed upside down, and there are some blank ones. I picked them out, and this is what was left. And I had no idea, and I was just asking Spirit to guide me. And so lo and behold, I did it the right way. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that guidance. And the runes in the old traditional way are read. It's really interesting in a pattern that has to do with flow. So if you see the rune that's right on the very top, that is the rune for disruption. The name of the rune is Hagalaz. It is about the power of disruption and the elements, elemental power. So I'm going to toggle up to the live screen, and we'll toggle back and forth. And I'm going to go to the text, and I'm just going to read you some of it, okay? So there it is. Really beautiful. All right, Hagalaz. So let me toggle over because I want you to see this in relationship to the whole reading, all right? So I'll show you each rune as we go through, and then I'm going to toggle back, and I just want you to keep gazing into the throw. So this rune basically asks the caster, Spirit saying he and she, anyone who comes to this oracle for a reading, the reading is going to focus on those types of energies that are needed in order to answer your question and to guide you as you go through your life. All right. So this rune has to do with change and with freedom, invention, and liberation. Each of those are attributes of this rune, and drawing it indicates a pressing need within the psyche to break free from constricting identification with material reality and to experience the world of the archetypical mind. And certainly that was the quest that I was on, and it was the type of information that I was seeking by having this journey. I find that incredibly beautiful and liberating. Given the framework that I was in and the frame of mind I was in, I was in the passage tomb working really hard to get beyond my fear, to get beyond my human nature, to connect with the energies that were there. And I was really frightened because I have experiences of astral travel. I have experiences of seeing people who've passed over. And so the part of me that has fear thought, boy, this could be a journey from which, like, am I ever going to come out of here? What's going to happen to me? And how will it change me? And so I was experiencing the fear of attachment to my current condition. And it's taken me several months to sort of wind through that and figure out that that was really a part of what was going on. And I would hope and pray that if I ever get a chance to go back, I will struggle with that less so that I will be more clear as a channel. But it was a really terrifying and interesting experience to have. So no surprise that this came out. And I think the reason it's standing there in the position that it's in is that Spirit was talking to me and acknowledging that I was there and what my quest was and what I was going through the moment. Really interesting. And the way in which, because I'm using my channeling abilities to make videos and be on YouTube, the way in which these concepts affect everyone. So messages for us all, Spirit says. So the rune of elemental disruption of events that seem to be totally beyond your control. Hagalaz has only an upright position, and yet it always operates through reversal. When you draw this rune, expect disruption, for it is the Great Awakener, capitalized. Although the form the awakening takes will vary. Perhaps you will experience a gradual feeling of coming to your senses, as though you are emerging from a deep sleep. Then again, the onset of power may be such as to rip away the fabric of what you previously knew as your reality, your security, your understanding of yourself. Disruption takes many forms. Plans go awry, relationships fail, failures happen. Whether you created the disruption or whether it comes from an outside source, you are not without power in the situation. Your inner strength, the will you have that has funded you until now in your life, provides support and guidance at this time, when everything you've taken for granted is being challenged. This is one of the cycle runes. The term radical discontinuity best describes the action of Hagalaz at its most forceful. The more severe the disruption in your life, the more significant and timely the requirements are for your growth. The universe and your own soul are demanding that you do indeed grow beyond this moment. Lovely opening to this message. So, it was solstice. When I came back, there was a lot of chatter that came through about the types of energies and the type of flow and what was occurring as we came into the days of the solstice in order to have this transformation and shift. And so Spirit saying to me, and there was a reason that the messages came out from the passage tombs. Next time I go, I'm hoping to go again this year. I'm going to revisit some of these places and have the other half of my journey. So I'm looking forward to that. Spirit's telling me, yes, I can do that now. So the next rune is the rune of constraint. And it is in partnership with this idea of disruption and discontinuity. So constraint is about, the name of the rune is Nauthes. Let me toggle back and show that to you. Here we go. Oops, sorry, wrong way. Okay, so this rune, pardon me, is about a similar theme. Spirits tell me they complement each other in general and in this reading. And it has to do with the flow of this type of energy in order to assist the journey of elemental disruption. It's pretty interesting to me now that I'm, finally allowing the reading to come out. having been wondering all these many months. So this is about the necessity of learning to deal with constraint. That is the lesson of the rune Naul. The rune represents the obstacles we create for ourselves, as well as those that we encounter in the world around us. Both can be equally difficult to handle. So what Spirit's saying is the idea of disruption and elemental power and the constraint that comes with that in a necessary way is a continuation of that state of being in order to help us identify our shadow side, the repressed sides, the places where growth has been stunted, that results in weaknesses that are often projected onto others. Very interesting. So the guidance is don't take the world personally. Work with the shadow side. Examine what it is in your nature that attracts hardship or misfortune to your life. When at last you can look upon the notion of constraint with a smile, you will recognize that the troubles, the denials, and the setbacks of your life are your teachers, your guides, and your allies. The need for constraint at this time is unquestionable. Drawing this rune indicates that there well may be holdups and reasons to reconsider your plans carefully. Clearly, there's work to be done on yourself. When fishermen can't go to sea, they repair their nets. So let the constraints of the time serve you in righting your relationship to yourself. Be mindful that rectification must always come before progress. And as always, consider the uses of adversity. It's interesting because as I came out of the passage tombs and I came back and started doing the readings, there was a lot of chatter about healing and about the difficulty of the year and the place into which we were growing. And the fact that this notion of healing from what has passed with a representation of death and the reading coming out in a passage tomb, Spirit is chattering in my ear this morning about that whole notion and about the many ways in which parts of ourselves must pass. And that is often seen as a constraint. The rune that sits to the left of this is the rune for joy. So this notion of being constrained and having elemental power and disruption of elemental power in order to bring a period of rest and restoration and repair and self-reflection and letting go of that which doesn't serve us brings us into the idea of being in a standing, if you will, in a state of joy. So let me show you the rune. Here it comes. I got so many things in my hands today. Isn't that beautiful? Quite lovely. Spirit's talking to me also about gateway. So there's a rune that looks very much like this that's about the gateway. So having come to this gateway, having come to the passage tomb, having discovered this channel on YouTube, there's lots of ways to interpret that. We explore all of these notions and what it is to be constrained and what it is to feel powerless and what a mistake it is to assess those moments as powerless, because there is so much energy there. It is a moment that brings us into a state of joy if we can utilize it in good faith, Spirit says. Okay, so let's toggle back. The very next rune is the rune called Laguz. It is about flow and water. Laguz is, turned around one page. Hang on one second. There we go. All right, so coming into the state of joy, into and out of this notion of disruption and constraint and repair and release. The flow of this reading is working in the direction to the left. It's very interesting to me. And when I was in the passage tombs, the plants grow counterclockwise in circles. The grass grows counterclockwise in circles. And the reading is coming out in Spirit saying, keep saying to the left, all right, to the left, to the left. It's how the flow goes. Against the grain, Spirit saying. So having been constrained and coming as a result into a state of joy, we see the next transition is about flow, about that which conducts. The unseen powers are active here, powers that nourish, shape, and connect. The attributes of the rune of flow are water, fluidity, the ebb and flow of emotions, careers, relationships, etc. This rune encourages you to immerse yourself in the experience of living without having to evaluate or understand. It speaks to the satisfaction of emotional needs and the awakening of the intuitive or lunar side of your nature. What I love about that is that Spirit has just been talking. If you've seen the recent videos, let me toggle back. Hang on one sec. All right, so here's the rune. You know, Mercury just went, actually Mercury's going direct today. And I am having some little fussy tech problems. I loaded up all my photos into my software, and they will not align correctly with the viewfinder. I don't know what that's all about. I'm assuming it's Mercury, so bear with me. All right, so there is the rune for flow. It's beautiful notation of the flow of energy, the flow of existence, the flow of the universe, and the ebb and flow as we come through the constraints. Interesting to me that this all came from the passage tomb, you know, a place where we associate with death and rebirth, you know, the notion of a passage, waiting for the sun to arise and illuminate the passageway so that those souls that are awaiting in that chamber can rise out on the energy of the sun into the next phase of their journey. So there we are, a little bit, I think, talking about that experience and a little bit the message that has been waiting to come out for us about all of these notions, all the things that I've been talking about. I love that this is about the lunar cycle, because here we are. Spirit's been talking about the lunar cycle since the beginning of the year. So I'm grateful that this has been sort of percolating and being on hold, because I think if I had done it when I immediately came back, I wouldn't have realized the depth of the message. So I'm just thanking Spirit that the message is coming out in the moment that it was meant to, despite all the things that I was worried about. You know, as the months went forward, I did begin to stress a little bit about, gee, you know, is that reading going to have any impact for us? Is it too late, etc.? All right, so there we are, joy and flow. Coming around now from the left to the right, we come to the next room, which is radio. And this is about journey, of course, about communication, about union and reunion, and all the concepts that come on the heels of release from constraint and flowing into, stepping into the joy of that release in order that the energy should be able to flow. So this is journey communication, union and reunion. And you know, hang on, let me show you the room. I got so many things in my hands today. There it is. Okay. This rune is concerned with communication, with attunement of something that has two sides, two elements, and with the ultimate union that comes at the end of the journey, when what is above and what is below are united and of one mind. I'm going to toggle back because I'm going to talk about the position that this sits in. Depending on who you believe, because there are a lot of people that each have their own opinions, and what I discovered when I was doing research for this reading was that many of them are sort of aligned with some central principles. I think folks develop their own way of divination as they begin to practice, And there are lots and lots of intellectual thought and writing about this topic. What I believe about this reading is, yes, there was an announcement in the rune for elemental power and disruption. And there was some notion about the flow through this constraint. I love that the rune for constraint is lying flat, almost as if it is speaking to the flow of energy and directing the flow of energy of the constraint, if you will, into the rune of joy, in order for general flow to emerge. Okay, Spirit's saying to come from that immersion into the constraint. And then there is a space. And we've had, I think, 4, 5, 6 months now since this cast was done. Just some quiet space to allow the flow to happen, to come into this next place, the place in which we exist now, Spirit says. All right, so inner worth mounts when this rune is here. And at such a time, you are not intended to rely entirely upon your own power. Instead, pardon me, ask what constitutes right action. Ask through prayer or meditation, through addressing the witness self, the teacher within. Once you are clear, you can neutralize your refusal to let right action through you, flow through you. Not intent on movement, be content to wait. While you wait, keep removing resistances. As all the obstructions give way, all remorse arising from trying to make things happen disappears. The journey is towards self-healing, self-change, union with the higher self. You are connected here with nothing less than unobstructed, perfect union. But the union of heaven and earth cannot be forced. Remember to regulate excesses in your life. Stand apart even from like-minded others. The notion of strength in numbers does not apply at this time. This is a part of the journey. The soul's journey is an individual event. It cannot be shared. And this is another of the cycle runes. Radio carries within its form the rune for joy. For now, the end is in sight. A simple prayer for the soul's journey is this: I will to will thy will. Such a prayer of intention is proper on any occasion and is particularly appropriate and a preamble to healing. Very interesting to me, again, the way this rune has come out. Okay, let me toggle over, take my little grainy glasses off, and show you. All right, so this is how the rune sits in the spread. Let's see if I can do this, because everything's backwards. There it is. So it came out, no, I've got it wrong, wait a minute. There we go. Came out like this. I don't know if I can do this. Let me see if that does it. Oh, it's still backwards. There it is. Okay, so that's how it came out of the throat. Very interesting. With the notion of joy and flow pointing down to the rest of the reading, but clearly having a separation of space from what had been, from the place that we had come through, leaving this mysterious space in the reading. I could not find any way to interpret that online. I looked and looked. I asked as many people as I knew. If there's anybody out there that happens to stumble upon this, I would really like some teaching. If you know about these things, please contact me. Okay? There's a link to my website. I always forget to say that. On my YouTube channel, on the landing picture, there's a link to my website in the description below. All the videos, all the information for readings, etc. are there, including my contact information. Okay? So you can look below the video and you'll find that information. There's a link there. Just click on it. So let me toggle back. again, because I think what's most important is for you to see this in connection to all the other things that have come out. So, given the traditional way that these things, this as a written language, the runes cycled from right to left. And that's why I'm doing the reading in the order that I am. So now we will be dropped down and we'll read from right to left again. Okay? So the very next rune is Jera. This is the rune of harvest, of fertility, and it's about the season of 1 year. So it is instructing us about the outcome, if you will, for this notion of having been constrained, having come through into a place of joy as a result of the work that happens in the constraint, coming to a place of flow in order to have union and continue our journey in communication directly aligned with the sacred realm. Standing alone in that place, allowing yourself to stand alone. Spirit saying, like the moment I had at the gateway, at the doorway, I was alone. I had a friend with me, but believe me, I was alone. And I was frightened and very excited, and all the other things I described, all this human emotion coming to the surface, really overwhelming. That's what Spirit's talking about. Okay? So in this notion of 1 year, and I think now I'm going to take a leap, I guess, and I'm going to assume that part of the reason this has been waiting is that there is sort of a new tone, a new tenor, a new type of message coming in about 2018. So this notion of harvest and a fertile season over the next year, this rune Jera is about beneficial outcomes, and it applies to any activity or endeavor to which you are committed. Be aware, however, that no quick results can be expected. A span of time is usually involved, hence the keyword 1 year, symbolizing a full cycle before the reaping and the harvesting or the deliverance. You have prepared the ground and planted the seeds. Now you must cultivate with care. To those whose labor has a long season, a long coming to term, Jera offers encouragement of success. Know that the outcome is in the keeping of providence and continue to persevere. So I love this wonderful notion. There's not a lot written about this rune, at least in the book that I have. It's very short, and basically it's just telling us to be mindful and that patience, if you will, is essential for the recognition of your own process, which in its own season leads to the harvest of the self. And then to the left of that, coming right away, after that season, as a result of having the patience and doing the cultivation and taking the time, Spirit's saying, sometimes it doesn't benefit you to push yourself and expect yourself to be in a place other than the one in which you're standing. The result of that work is movement. And the very next rune is about movement and progress and the power of the horse, the notion of horse. The name of the rune is Awaz. Let me toggle back and I'll show it to you. Okay. Oh, and you know what? I apologize. Getting so excited I forgot to show you that one. So that's the rune for harvest. Okay. And then right on the heels of that, Spirit's saying, of course, look at that. Movement, progress, the strength of a horse, the speed, the swiftness, Spirit's saying. When the time is right, the movement comes and it feels rapid. Okay? So, Awaz is a rune of transit, of transition and movement, physical shifts, new dwelling places, new attitudes, and a new life. It also signifies movement in the sense of improving or bettering any situation. There is about this rune steady progress, gradual development, accompanying notion of growth through numerous shifts and changes. This could apply to the growth of a business or to the development of an idea. Moral effort and steadfastness are called. When you draw this rune, it is another of the cycle runes. So very interesting that the other message is buried in this. We have a lot of cycle runes here. And it is about moving through the paces of the journey. The stages, rather. Sorry. So one of the things it says is, as I cultivate my own nature, all else follows, of course. And we all know that, I think. The rune symbol is the horse, and it signifies the bond between horse and rider. Bronze Age artifacts showed a horse drawing the sun across the sky. And here Awaz is saying, you have progressed far enough to feel a measure of safety in your position. Now it is time again to turn and face the future reassured. Prepare to share the good fortune that comes your way. This type of sharing is significant since it relates to the sun's power to foster life and illuminate all things with its light. Interesting. So look at the very next rune below that. We're cycling, again, the energy is cycling through Jera, which is about harvest, into the notion of movement and progress. Cycling down from left to right. The rune, when I threw it down, there was a really big sharp stone right underneath the blanket, unbeknownst to me, and it hit the stone and broke the rune right in half. And believe me, in that moment, I had a panic attack. I've calmed down about it now. Spirit's saying it's just what happened. Don't worry about it. But I always think, well, there must be a reason. And I was working really hard to just be aligned with and be a channel for the energy that was inside the passage tomb on that particular day. And, the wisdom of the ancients, the culture out of which these things arose, the soul. Think of how many souls have passed through this place over time. Many, 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 Spirit says. So that notion of flow and journey and union and progress, the strength of a horse, the very next rune is the rune for protection. That is a rune called Algiz. It is all about coming to a place of having the stamina for the journey. One of the things that came to me when I sat and looked at this, and I was thinking, all right, what does that mean that one of the runes broke? Oh my God, So, the message that I got was, all right, don't freak out about it. Don't worry about it. It's just what happened. It's okay. Because I threw these things really hard. I was not going lightly at it. I really jumbled them up, and then I lifted the stones up and I just tossed them, and down they went. So one of them broke. So let's just read about that. And I left this in the passage tomb. I just sort of sat with it for a while, and I thought, I tucked it in a place where nobody will ever see it. It'll be there for however many eons the passage tomb still exists, and I bet lots of people have done things like that. So it's tucked in behind one of the altars, down behind some of the stones. I'll show you some more pictures when we're done. Okay. So I don't have it to show you. I guess that's the point. I don't have it to hold up to the camera. I apologize. I've been remiss in getting a replacement. All right. So this is about protection and the elk. The text says, control of the emotions is at issue here. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? During times of transition and shift in life course and accelerated self-change, it is important not to collapse yourself into your emotions, the highs as well as the lows. New opportunities and challenges are typical of this rune, and with them may come trespasses and unwanted influences. Algiz serves as a mirror for the spiritual warrior, the one whose battle is always with the self. The warrior's protection is like the curved horns of the elk, or the warning rustle of sedge grass. For those both for both serve to keep open space around you. It is interesting, isn't it? And there's one more room to come out, but look how much space there is. So I think what's coming from Spirit is the spaces that are existing in the reading have everything to do with the messages that come out from the actual stones, and they are part of the reading. So the fact that we're talking about having some space around you, about standing in your life as a spiritual warrior, facing the challenges, and this room is in, Spirit's calling it a prosperous position, yet standing alone. I love it. Remain mindful that timely right action and correct conduct are your only true protection. If you find yourself feeling pain, observe it. Stay with it. Do not try to pull down the veil and escape from life by denying what is happening. You will progress as you are meant. Okay? So, if we want to read into the fact that it's broken, certainly I, as a human being, went there seeking my own healing. The places in which inside of my journey, which have caused me to feel broken, etc., etc. And I think there's a message about, we're going to feel broken sometimes, but don't you worry. You're standing with this elemental power and this idea of the assurance of progress, knowing that you are protected. So the final rune is the rune for strength. Its power animal is the ox, and it has to do with manhood and womanhood. The name of the rune is Uruz. And I love that it sits in a way that is reaching far out into the future. So the things that are on the right-hand side are indications of future events, future energy, where in the direction in which we are going. So this reading is about the situation that we're in. The movement of the stones. Interestingly enough, the spaces and the movement move toward the future, and the outcome is the future. And like I said, it's been 6 months since I did the Runecast. And in my complete ignorance at the time that it happened, I did look at some of the stones and the way they were placed, and I thought, how am I ever going to figure out what that means? And Spirit's telling me, that's all it's about. This is about having arrived into a place, standing ready for the great changes that were about to come upon us, leading us into the future. So let's take a look at that. And you know what? I'll show you. Hang on a second. I'll show you the stone. Here it is. Okay. So let's see. This is the rune of terminations and new beginnings. Drawing Uruz indicates that the life you have been living has outgrown its form. There you go. I'm laughing. I feel like, okay, that's it. I'm done. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you. It's astounding to me. And yes, we can relate this to everything that happened in October. But the fact that this relates to this current moment and the types of readings that have been coming out since the turn of the year and in the last 2 months especially, I love this. So I'm just going to express my joy and gratitude. I'm going to toggle back so you can see it in relationship, and I'll finish reading from the text, okay? All right, so this is the rune of terminations and new beginnings, indicating that the life you have been living has outgrown its form. That form must transform so that the new energy can be released in a new form. This is a rune of passage, and as such, part of the cycle of initiation. Ooh, That's pretty amazing. Positive growth and change may involve a descent into darkness as part of the cycle of perpetual renewal. As in nature, this progression consists of 5 aspects: death, decay, fertilization, gestation, and rebirth. Events occurring now may well prompt you to undergo a death within yourself. Since self-change is never coerced, we are always free to resist. Remain mindful that the new life is always greater than the old. Prepare then for opportunity disguised as loss. It could involve the loss of someone or something to which you have an intense emotional bond, and through which you are living a part of your life, a part that must now be retrieved so that you can live it out for yourself. In some way, that bond is being severed, a relationship radically changed, a way of life coming to an end. Seek among the ashes and discover a new perspective and a new strength. The ancient symbol for Uruz was the aurochs, a wild ox. When the wild ox was domesticated, an immensely difficult task, it could transport heavy loads. Learn to adapt yourself to the demands of such a creative time. Firm principles attached to this rune. At the same time, humility is called for, since in order to rule, you must learn how to serve. Uruz puts you on notice that your soul and the universe support your new growth. Incredibly wonderful. I really love it. Let me transition over and we'll chit-chat a little bit. So, for everybody who's been patiently with me here, I'm going to end the video, and I'm looking forward. I'm actually going to start tomorrow. I'm waiting because another day or two for Mercury to settle down. And then I'm going to start the readings, and we'll see what comes out for the readings for May. Really excited about that. So thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to leave you with the photograph of the reading, and I'm going to clip the video at this point. I'm going to toggle over and talk to all the folks who've been here for the live stream and chat with them for a little bit. So thanks so much to everybody for being here with me, and I'll be very eager to hear your thoughts. So definitely put your thoughts about the journey that you've been having from October into these months of early spring, when all this transition and change and transformation and literal evolution has happened for all of us. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful 2 weeks. And today, don't forget, today is the new moon. I put some videos